So hello. First of all, thank you, Philip and LSG, for inviting me here again after 2.5 years. And it is very humbling to speak here with this amazing cast of people. The talk introduces a metabolic understanding of architectural objects and materials, one that seeks adaptability both in the ability of outputs to undergo changes in the future and the capacity of pre-existing substrates to inform and steer designs. Here, objects exist within a deep continuum that necessarily exceeds generations and intentions, and values are attributed both from within and without the architectural project and its script, challenging authorial purity and promoting fluid definitions, affordances, and ecologies of use. So what I'll be showing is a series of drawings that will be soon published in Rachel Armstrong's book, Liquid Life, on nonlinear materiality, which investigate liquidity as a technological and metaphorical paradigm for design in the 21st century. So it is a series of chronophotographic compositions based on her prototype experiments. And it serves as a way to rethink the drawing as a living negotiation and conversation rather than a one-directional transmission of intentions. So what kind of drawings would be possible if we substituted the droplet to the line or the point? And what would such substitutions imply? So point and lines assert, declare, and fix identities, distances, coordinates, hierarchies, and spatial relations. They tame by abstraction. They translate by subtraction and reduction. They claim, capture, and annex. And they universalize. So I can ask anyone on the other side of the planet to draw a 5-centimeter line, and they know what I mean, and they can definitely comply. Furthermore, points and lines depend on a degree of tabula rasa, on the erasure of a preceding context and the construction of a background, of a blank canvas, with a clearing in the forest, in a way, the Vitruvius account of the origin of society and architecture, and the invention of purity, which is never given, natural, or found, but assigned, endowed, and granted. And this is necessary because points and lines depend on a degree of legibility. So these drawings propose a different paradigm. To draw with liquids, one has to forget the complicity of canvases and pencils, figure and ground, and to forgo the control implicit in their dance. So the contrasting white and black figures here fail to reproduce reliable semiotic conditions, eluding clear-cut distinctions between background and foreground, canvas and ink. Rather, these fluid masses undergo soft modifications and exchanges in 3 dimensions, propelling themselves chemically until nothing is left but inert glycerin formations. So liquidity here has less to do with fluidity, with the ability to conform, to form with, than with environmental receptivity, reactivity, and responsiveness. It cannot be blindly assigned to hydrogen or oxygen atoms, or even to water molecules, which can exist in solid or gaseous states. Rather, liquidity depends on context, as an emergent property of the encounter of molecules with specific temperatures and atmospheric conditions, chemical solutions, vessels, at different scales and levels of interaction. Anyone can draw a line or a dot anywhere, but how does one begin to draw a droplet? And so a droplet is queer, its identity transitional and situational, fluid and performative. It resists fixed definitions and eludes symbolic clarity. The droplet channels a material recalcitrance, a fundamentally unabstractable, analoged, territorialized, and relational vibrancy. So moving on to some other projects, we encounter a similar material resistance when we work with microorganisms. Oh, that's not it. I missed the drawing. Designing with fluid and living matter implies thinking more about distribution, accumulation, flows, accretion, contagion, and growth than of finished and beautiful objects. It also requires a relinquishing of control because we're no longer the arbiters of what is good and bad, right or wrong. So in a brick designed to house microbial fuel cells, such as this one, I can decide whether these prototypes work better than the next one. It is not about beauty. It is not about concepts, ideas, or intents, or anything I'm in control of as a designer. Design decisions are shared and outsourced to other disciplines, to scientists, as well as to non-humans, to bacteria, to their electroactivity, and to the happiness of their biofilms. These prototypes were developed in the context of the Living Architecture project led by Richard Armstrong at Newcastle University, and discuss literal implementation of metabolic design, the integration of metabolisms of living organisms within the static and inert fabric of our cities. The very notion of wall is at stake here, for instance, no longer as a barrier or separator, but as a deployable and adaptable set of living parts, as a site for exchanges and collaborations, negotiations and transformations, as a body that is porous, situated, and positively entangled within its surrounding environment. So what if our bricks were powered by living technologies? But also, what if we didn't take our units of design for granted, be they bricks, planks, sheets, blocks, 2x4s, and radically rethought what makes up architectural space? In the installation Here Be Monsters, developed with the Experimental Architecture Group for the Great Exhibition of the North in Newcastle upon Tyne just this summer, discarded bike parts articulate a new tectonic sensibility, a different way of partitioning space. So designing with these systems did not correspond with having ideas, which can then be translated or embodied, but encountering material opportunity, listening to found objects and giving them a voice, sharing a degree of authorship with a pre-existing material substrate, and letting it steer a project. So we have considered so far a loosening of authorship vis-a-vis local and non-abstractable ecologies. First, in a liquid understanding of the drawing. Second, in the implementation of design that not only partially translate intentions and are more akin to gardening or cooking than to standard notions of design and control. And third, in the ability of material substrates, like the bike parts, to guide and effectively co-author design outputs. The reason why this slide shows the America Folk Art Museum by Todd Williams and Billy Chan is to illustrate another side of authorship, which doesn't only have to do with the design process, but also with the way in which design intents feed the apparatuses that assign value to buildings. This was perhaps one of the best, most remarkable buildings in New York City, built in 2001, critically acclaimed, and promptly demolished in 2014. And I don't fully have time to go through the story of why that is, but the question is, what I want to mention is that the reason for demolishing this building, which was purchased by MoMA, which wants to extend what they call their MoMA campus, and this doesn't quite fit with the plan, but the reason for finally deciding to demolish this building was the need to maintain its identity. So when Diller and Scafidi and Renfro were asked to look at this building and decide what role it could take within the new campus they were designing, they finally decided that changing this building would compromise its identity. And so in order to not compromise its identity, paradoxically, the building was torn down. And what this is energetically, in terms of embodied carbon, materially and culturally obscene in many ways, the key lesson here is how the notion of identity fundamentally bundles up with the architect's project, a coherent whole, with the assignment of value. So much so that one cannot exist without the other. So we understand architectural authorship and control here as casting a much longer shadow, one that might not longer make sense in this day and age. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Questions? Yes.
Hey, just real quick.
Hey.
Absolutely love the work, and you know that. Just with the droplet drawings, were you able to kind of predict some of the outcomes with any kind of software first, or is this really just an intensive material study?
Yeah, it's just analog, and really, it's in this case, it's me following the data that's already there from virtual experiments, and sort of graphically making it visible in a different way. So in a way, it's a study in maybe thinking about Etienne Jules Marais and his kind of photographs. It's something very similar to that, and it's really about comparing how, in one case, we have an object that is incredibly stable, and the changes are about revolving around a hinge, the revolving on limbs, or the moving that doesn't really change what we recognize and identify with the object, the background, and its activity. And it's relatively normative in that sense. In a way, it's the operational capacity of a machine. And in this case, it's really figuring out what this thing looks like a durational object. If we don't look at the single fragments, but look at the overall trajectory of transformations, and can we still recognize that as some kind of unity? And then the further idea after that is, what if we did that with all of our materials, basically, and really started thinking about our objects and materials and buildings with that same kind of, within that kind of continuum. So it's more a graphical exercise in that sense.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.